and it was a recession. So when I was brought in, I was handed a budget my first year and said, well, we're projecting a $125,000 deficit,
Wow.
but good luck.
Okay, welcome back to Exploring Growth. Today we have, I think, an interesting story of a local Central Florida nonprofit. I'm here with Karla Greenway. She's the executive director in the nonprofit world, like a CEO in the real, the other world, at Interfaith Emergency Services over in near Ocala in Marion County. Welcome, Karla.
Hi, thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So, when I came across your organization, I immediately thought, okay, well, you've got to have some interesting stories to tell about growth. And, when you talk about the nonprofit world, it's a different breed. It's got a lot of the makings of the for-profit world, but there's a lot of additional layers that go on as well, I would say, in addition to the things you have to deal with in the typical
True.
for-profit world. I've worked with a number of nonprofits, and kind of coming up through the years, my wife was actually, for her career before kids, she did event planning and fundraising for a couple nonprofits, small nonprofits up in Birmingham, Alabama. And so, of course, I was her number one volunteer. Anytime there was an event or something happening, I had to be there, helping her with a silent auction or, doing some kind of thing that has to do with fundraising. And I did it mostly willingly. It was good for the most part. But then there was those late nights of teardown that I didn't enjoy. But I've seen that side of it. And I've also I've had a couple clients that have been nonprofits and helped them with some strategy and seen, the business side of things. And, I think that there's a lot to be said for people who run nonprofits, because it is can be a thankless world. So, I'm excited to have you on and talk about some of those things that you've done behind the scenes to grow Interfaith and just kind of learn a little bit more of that about your organization.
Thank you. Well, first, I would say I appreciate you even acknowledging it as a business. A lot of people don't think of nonprofits as businesses, but we do have to operate as a business.
Yes.
We just, instead of employees, we have to deal with volunteers.
Right. That's right.
And again, our clients get what they get for free. They're not your patrons that are purchasing something. So
that's right.
It is. There are some nuances that make it a little more challenging, but we definitely have to follow a lot of business practices and principles. And a lot of people don't appreciate that. So thank you for acknowledging.
Yeah. Well, and for the people who have not worked with volunteers directly or led volunteers, they're basically employees who are working for free, and they're just basically working on passion. So if you think about your employees and how much passion they have, but they really show up because they get paid, just take away the money part, and that's about how more challenging it gets.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And we have a lot of our volunteers are retirees. So, we have to deal with their schedules and their travel plans and all that, but it somehow always works.
Yeah. So we were talking just a minute ago before we jumped on here about some of the early days of you getting started in your role. Give us a quick, succinct story about how you got started and a little bit about the organization, so we have some context to the work that you're doing.
Okay. Well, to start with the history of the organization, it was started in 1983 by a group of local pastors that were in a networking meeting. And the topic that kept coming to light was, we have these people come into our churches and they're not coming for spiritual needs. They're coming for food, and they're coming for clothing and shelter. And so all the churches were scrambling to create clothing closets and soup kitchens. And somebody finally had this idea and said, why don't we just pull all of our resources together and create one place to do it efficiently? And then we can refer people there when they come to us. And that's how Interfaith was started. So it's a really cool connecting point for all of the faith-based community here in Marion County. Of course, what I love about Interfaith is that so many different faiths come together to serve. And it's like all those lines are erased at Interfaith. We're just all people who love people and want to help. So that part's really cool. But it was, Ocala historically has kind of been considered a small rural area,
Mhm.
and with kind of a good old boys network here.
Yeah.
And and so I came in after the man who was who had built it to what the point it was when I took over. Had been there 23 years. He was well loved by the community. But and I get it, because it's this is such hard work. I think he had just the last couple of years he was here, he was probably struggling with some burnout,
Mhm.
and it was a recession. So they when I was brought in, I was handed a budget my first year, and said, well, we're projecting $125,000 deficit.
Wow.
But good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
Do
Here
the
you go.
best you can. And to be honest, my background was not in fundraising or marketing. I had worked for a state
Mhm.
government agency,
Okay.
and was always just handed my budget.
Yeah.
Here's spend. So so this was a new challenge for me. And but what, one of the things I learned right out of the gate was you can't be afraid to try things.
That's
If
right.
I wouldn't have I tried so many different things to try to start building momentum and increasing our donor base. And if I had been afraid to try things, or afraid what people would say or
Mhm.
think, there's no way I wouldn't have made it. We would have been done in about 2 years, and Interfaith would have been no more.
Yeah.
So, and it's been a really fun journey for me to learn how to market, kind of
Yeah.
from scratch.
Right.
And I mean, I had a really good base to build on, because we had a really good reputation in the community. The
That's
problem
good.
was
Yeah.
the vast majority of the community didn't know about Interfaith.
Uh,
So my first goal was to make Interfaith a household name. I
yeah.
wanted the residents of Interfaith to think of us as their charity. Like, this is our
Mhm.
community's charity, and we're here to take care of our neighbors, and I wanted everyone to feel a part of this.
I like that.
So it was
That's a great initial vision. I like how you articulated that. Was it that clear to you in those early days that that's what you needed to do? Because to me, when you say it, hindsight, it sounds great. But in the early days, when you're, for lack of a better word, scrambling to make this thing get off the ground and get to where it needs to be, even coming from a deficit, I think that thought is a very advanced way of thinking. Like that's very much a vision for the organization. Did it come about over time, or did you come in and say, no, this is what we needed?
no, I mean, that's pretty immediate. I mean, my
That's
immediate
awesome.
thought was, and what's funny is I'm struggling with the fact that I need to raise money,
Hmm.
and people are struggling right now,
Hmm.
and so where I did struggle was coming up with a recession proof fundraising
Oh wow.
scheme or campaign.
Okay.
And so, and in my head, I'm going, okay, there's 300,000 people in Marion County.
Hmm.
If I could even get a third of them to give me $5,
Yeah.
our total budget at that time was a little over $500,000.
Okay.
I thought I'd have almost my whole budget.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and I'm thinking, okay, if I can get a third, and it sounded like much, a third of Marion County
Yeah.
people to just give me $5, how hard
Yeah.
is that?
Right.
And that's where, again, people probably, when I shared that, thought, okay, you're crazy, but
Mhm.
but you can try. And I created this idea of giving Interfaith a high five, because people that did know Interfaith loved Interfaith, um, and loved what we did. So I turned it into this high five campaign, where it was, give Interfaith a high five if you like what we do, or if you support us. And the high
Okay.
five was a $5 bill.
Okay.
We also made big foam red hands that we would
Nice.
smack people. And it was really kind of grassroots. I
Yeah.
started, I recruited some volunteers, and we would set up in front of the local grocery stores. We would go to every public event, every fair, every festival, anything,
Yeah.
set up a table and just say, hey, give us a high five, and,
That's
and collect
amazing.
$5 bills. And then I started getting into businesses, and trying to, I'd ask employers if I could just hit their employees up for a $5
Yeah.
bill. And so many of them just love the shtick that they,
Well, I mean,
they
let
were
me tell
happy to
you,
pull it
that is
together.
that is a great marketing campaign. Like I couldn't think of one better myself. I
Oh,
think that's
thank you.
such a great very simple. It's very clear. It's very
Mhm.
approachable. We're talking about $5. And
Yeah.
again, even though you're kind of coming out of a recession period of time, it's still very approachable. If people have any inkling to give, they can just do that one thing and feel
Right.
connected. But it's not about the $5. It's about
Mhm.
starting those conversations and doing all the things that you're probably about to explain. It's all the things that come along with it, and
Exactly.
the simplicity of it. It's funny. We're actually working this week on a piece of content for something else we do in Signal Media, for an email. And I'm talking about exactly that. Is if you want to get awareness, you have to think about your target audience. What does they care about? How do you get their attention? Keep it simple, keep it clear. And I
Yeah.
couldn't think of a better example than that. I mean, that's such a great, tagline. It's easy for you to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. So congrats on that. I mean,
Well,
that's
thank you.
awesome coming right out of the gate.
What was fun was, I don't know where this came from, but um, my thought was, I wanted to create this sense of inclusivity. I wanted people to
Yeah.
feel like they were included.
Hmm.
So we called it the High Five Club,
Oh,
actually.
cool. Yeah.
And before I even started the campaign, I got some college kids to help me plaster these signs all over town
That's
that
awesome.
just they said were, "Are you in the club?" That's it. It
That's
didn't say
cool.
anything about interfaith, just, "Are you in the club?" I even got a couple of the local magazines to just do a whole page, "Are
Yeah.
you in the club?" And my thought was, if you could get people asking the question,
Yeah.
well, what club?
What's the
And when
club?
I come back and go, it's the High Five Club, they go, "Oh," then
Yeah.
they have a quick connection.
Right.
And then that's what we did. We launched it as the High Five Club, give us a high five and be in the club. And when we got the high fives, we even had a sticker that we gave everybody to wear on
Hmm.
their shirt that says "I'm in the club," hoping
Yeah.
too that people would go, "What club?" Well, it's Interfaith Club. Give them a high
It
five. You can get
Yeah,
so
it's
it
sort
was
of
a whole
almost like
thing.
a social contagion type of
Yeah.
Me Too type of, you're tapping into the human piece of a human spirit there. It makes me think of, when you go vote and it says I voted,
Right.
you want people to know. If you put that sticker on,
Hmm.
you want people to know I voted,
Yeah.
right? It
And two,
means something.
everybody wants to be in the club, So like
That's right.
if somebody else has a sticker that says "I'm in the club," they're going to go, "Well, what club? I want to be."
Yeah, right.
So,
It at
and
least it piques their curiosity, which is
yeah,
step one.
it worked, and it worked somehow, some way. But
I love that.
so fast forward, we ended that year in a surplus, not a deficit, not a big
That's awesome.
surplus, but
Yeah.
we made up for the $125,000 deficit,
Hmm.
and ended in a surplus. And but the thing is, it built this momentum that people were talking about interfaith.
Hmm.
People were thinking of interfaith. We were growing by volunteers, and it opened so many doors for me to get in front of church groups and civic groups. And
Hmm.
I spent the first 2 or 3 years literally just day in and day out speaking to groups. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember there was a 15-month span that I didn't attend my own church because I was in a different church every week
Yeah.
speaking about interfaith. But again, that campaign is what opened the door for that. And
Right.
when I could tell a pastor, I'm not asking for a lot of money, I'm just asking for $5 bills,
Yeah.
they were a lot more
Much more
welcoming.
open to it.
And I
Yeah.
would just stand at the back of the church when church was over, and
Yeah.
and people would walk by and give me the $5. So it really did just get my foot in the door for the donations I'm getting now, where I can pick
Yes.
up a phone to call a bank president and say, "Hey, I need sponsorship money," or
Yeah.
and of course back then, even most people gave $5, but the people that could afford 50
Mhm.
gave 50. The people that could afford 25 gave
That's
25.
right.
We got some $500
They're
donations out
naturally
of them.
gonna give to their, their
Right.
comfortability, yeah.
So, and that was, like I said, that was right out of the gate. And then, once I started getting into the arenas that I wanted to get in, that's when I could really start doing more education about going in depth about what we do. Cause at
Mhm.
that point, most people just thought we were a food pantry. If I
Okay.
went into a room and said, "How many of you know what Interfaith do?" Everyone would say, "Oh yeah, you're a food pantry." They
Yeah.
didn't know that we had a prescription medication program and a homeless shelter and
Right.
did all these other, services. And so that was, like I said, anything you can come up with that'll just get your foot in the door, no matter
Yeah.
how simple. And sometimes even now, um, I will start out with not an ask, with a, just a, I just want to come talk to you. I want to come say thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe not even for what you do for interfaith, but what you do in the community.
Right.
And And that goes a long way.
Yeah.
Caring about what they care about too,
Yes. Yeah,
goes a
I
long
think
way.
that's number one. When you understand what it is that your donors, your primary audience there
Hmm.
for fundraising cares about, then you can tap into that and align yourself with it.
Hmm.
So you said you went from kind of en masse to these other arenas. What kind of other arenas are you talking about? Local civic groups or business, like commercial
Yeah,
accounts?
businesses, civic groups, and then I got invited to be on some local radio stations,
Okay.
interviewed within local newspapers. Yeah, I was interviewed several times by some of our local news outlets, and then even TV 20 would come down out of Gainesville, and
Hmm.
they started keeping up with us, like
That's
during the
awesome.
holidays or
That's
whatever.
great
So
exposure.
and the local newspapers here just really wrap their arms around us, um and really anything that I wanted to get out there, they would help me get out there.
Yeah, that's
But
amazing.
so it was, it's been a fun run. But
Yeah, that's yeah, go ahead.
we also, though, what people don't realize is we also are in the business of competition, which I hate to use that word in nonprofits, because in
Hmm.
Marion County anyway, we're all friends. We all support each other. We
Hmm.
donate to each other's charities. If I have something that can bless another charity, we give it,
Hmm.
and vice versa. Um, but the reality is we are all competing for the same dollars. We're
That's right.
competing, because so again, that's the going back to tapping into what matters to people. If
Hmm.
I know there's a local business that's already supporting the Humane Society, and I
Hmm.
know that's what matters to them,
Yeah.
I'm not even going to go there. I'm not going to spend my time going after somebody who I know that their passion is animals. When
Right.
so it's paying attention to those kind of things too, not just
So
going after everybody because they're there.
yeah, and it's good to be aware of that because it's true. It's a marketplace, and
Mhm.
you have to acknowledge that. I'm curious though. It makes me think. Have you ever gotten together in the same room, like around a table with these other organizations, and had sort of like a consortium of sorts where, you just have these conversations transparently and say, not that you would necessarily say, "Hey, we're all competing for the same dollar," but how can we align ourselves to more benefit each other? Have you ever done that, or is that kind of faux pas?
Actually, we have a local nonprofit business council that pulls us
Okay,
together, and we have those conversations frequently.
that's awesome.
And so, like I said, we talk about ethics. We talk about
Yeah.
not stepping on each other's toes. When somebody spent a lot of time establishing a relationship with a
Hmm.
donor,
Hmm.
just kind of out of
Yep. Respect.
courtesy,
Hmm.
we don't go after them. And I've even had people call me when they know one of my donors has approached them
Hmm.
and say, I just want you to know they approached us. I don't, I hope it's, I'm like,
That's amazing.
absolutely. So it's,
It's a great relationship.
we're very fortunate, to have our nonprofit business council here in Marion County, the way that we work together and
Yeah.
support each other. And we do share a lot of the same donors. So, what's
So
really cool, it's like we're having a beer fest coming up. It's one
okay.
of my favorite events to fundraise for, because two of my other favorite charities, the Literacy Council and Kimberly Center for Child Protection, that they do counseling for children who are abused and neglected.
Okay.
The three of us get to work together, and it's such an easy sell to tell a business, hey, you
Hmm.
get to help three charities with one
Yes.
sponsorship.
Yeah.
So it's a three for deal,
And you
and
get to drink beer, which doesn't
exactly.
usually hurt. You know.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, to work with these two other charities. And it's funny because people are surprised when they see us all coming together, and
Yeah.
working together so hard on this event.
Yeah.
Not worrying about who gets what, just
Yeah.
all of us
That's really
working
cool
to
to
make it
see,
good.
especially in a small town. Smaller town
Hmm.
where you could easily go the opposite way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm curious now. Okay, so I mean, from my perspective, you came out of the gate swinging, like amazing campaign, got lots of exposure. You got the newspapers on your side, radio stations. Like if you have a clear message, people are going to know who you are and know how to give. Now, where do you take that? In the more recent years or months, what have you done to continue that momentum of growth? To
Mhm.
get more donors and maybe talk about what types of donors. I'm curious about, getting new people.
Well, of course, social media started to really explode around that
Right.
time. So I worked that really hard for the next few years.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the interfaith page isn't really, we don't have as many connections on that as we do my personal one. And I would just friend anybody and everybody because
Yeah.
anything I share on that, I would share on my personal page.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because when I got married a couple years ago and my husband was looking at me, because he assumed I knew all those 3,000
Yeah.
people. I'm like, I don't know them.
Yeah.
I just, like them. So when I have something to share for interfaith, it gets the
That's right.
message out. So social media is, it's a great tool.
Hmm.
It's getting more and more, again, competitive for people's attention even.
Hmm.
Now we're trying to figure out how to do the reels and the video, all
Hmm.
the trainings telling us that the short, succinct videos are what's getting people's attention.
Hmm.
So, and it's keeping up with those things.
Yeah.
That's just so important to keep up with those trends for social media.
Sure.
That's a but and also I think just relationship building. Like I joined a few different groups and networks to partially for myself, but
Hmm.
but they have turned out also to be great ways for me to meet new people and just keep progressing
Yeah.
the familiarity with interfaith. So I joined a local Rotary Club
Okay.
mainly because I work. And people, it's funny when you work for a nonprofit, people think you're
Yeah.
just this wonderful person because,
Yeah. Right.
but that's my job, and I do care about the people, and I do it because I'm
Yes.
passionate about it. But personally, for me, I get paid for that, so
Yes.
I need outlets where I can feel like I'm just giving. I'm
Yes.
not.
Yeah.
So I joined and one of the things that is a nice diversion from the things I deal with at Interfaith at my job with poverty and all that is art. I love art. So
Oh,
I joined the local art association and joined their board and got enmeshed in that really for my own gratification,
yeah.
but it connected me to new
I can
donors.
see that. Yep.
And I help with their fundraisers without um, you know, I avoided the conflict of going after my own donors, but
Yeah.
and of course I didn't steal their donors, but a lot of people you find out that care about art also care about homelessness. So,
Yes.
and then I did the same thing. I got involved in a Rotary Club really just to increase my little social network,
Yeah.
and now I'm connected to 5 local Rotary clubs that will, embrace interfaith. They, will I'll donate to us in some way.
Yeah.
So it's just my own personal giving back to the community has
Sure.
benefited interfaith.
Yeah. That's so great. I love to, I mean, just to, not miss the fact that you're such a good person. Okay. You are doing all these good things as your job. And then you're like, no, that's not enough. I'm going to go do other things on my free time. So, thanks for being that
Oh,
person that we need in the community. We need more people like
oh,
you.
you're very
um,
kind.
I would say let's shift, from awareness, where you're going out and getting new eyeballs and new people looking at what you're doing and giving, to nurturing or retaining current donors. What are some of the things that you do, maybe explicitly or specifically, or maybe that sort of happen naturally, organically, to
Mhm.
keep donors engaged?
So it's funny. One of the other first crazy things I tried to do, I think it was probably my second or third year I started this. At the holidays, we get almost 2/3 of our donations come in the last 2 months of the year,
Mhm.
and I had this wild idea that I was gonna do a handwritten Christmas card to every donor that gave a donation the
I
month
love
of
that. Yeah.
December. And it was a challenge, but I did
Makes our
it.
tired hand.
But I just made that part of that was a priority every
Yeah.
day. When the mail came in, I got
Uh-huh.
that list and I wrote those cards. And now I'm happy to say I've built my donor base to the point there's no way I could possibly do that.
Hmm.
I still do it to some degree. It's kind of hit or miss, but
Sure.
a couple things that I have incorporated because there's no way for me to do a personal contact with every donor.
Yeah.
But I get a report every week of all the brand new donors, first time donors, every first time donor gets they're going to get their acknowledgement letter for taxes,
Hmm.
but they're also going to get a handwritten note from me that says, thank you for being one of the people that make us happen, that make this
Yeah.
ministry possible. And it's funny because I've never tracked to see how many of those become repeat donors.
Hmm.
I was telling my staff I really need to do that.
Yeah.
Um, but I do believe a lot of them do continue to be
Hmm.
donors, because now, every so often I'll get a report for repeat donors, and that list keeps growing.
Yeah.
And a lot of those names I recognize because they're people I sent notes to. So randomly, I'll send a note to somebody who's just been, a consistent donor.
Hmm.
Um, and then also, I started this past year because the other thing that's happened is the level of our donations have gone up, the dollar amounts. And so I get a report every week, or every week for any donations that came in over $500.
Okay.
And they're going to get a handwritten note from
Sure.
me. If it's someone that I've written a bunch of handwritten notes to already, then they might get a phone call from me just to say thanks.
Right.
So it's really about, making them know that you're seen.
Yeah. Keeping it
You're not just a
personal.
number.
Yeah.
You matter, and you matter to us. And it's fun. I've got one donor that I've never met in person, but I've talked to him a couple times on the phone. We get on the phone, we can't. It's like we could talk all day.
Yeah.
There's just such a great connection
Yeah.
there. And again, I've never met him. We just connect on the passion for what Interfaith does.
That's
And
so great.
and again, it started with me just writing him notes saying thank you.
Right. So I'm curious, if we were to say, I know you probably do a lot of the same type of things with corporate donors, but if we were to kind of categorize everything you're talking about as, individual donors, is there anything different you do for corporate, or how do you approach corporate? How do you, what's that ask look like? And maybe, once they do come on board, what does that relationship look like?
Yeah. So the ask for corporate, typically, I try to involve my board with that.
Hmm.
So there, I just feel like it's important to have them on board for those. And it's especially nice if some of them know, that's the bomb when someone on my board knows someone in a
Hmm.
business at that top level.
Yeah.
And again, I don't typically go in first time with my hand out. I go in saying, I just want you to know what Interfaith does. I
Hmm.
want you to know, what we do for this community. And usually I'll acknowledge what they've done for our community, what impact they've had, whether, they're a great employer. Some businesses employ the people that we serve, and I'll
Sure.
point that out to them. So, I try, like, again, I try to connect on a level that's not just about gimme,
Yeah.
you know, and then, typically, when I do have to go back around and ask for something, then it's a yes. So I don't like calling and asking for money and that being my first connection.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable with that. I know a lot of people are, and I guess as a, head of a nonprofit, you're supposed to be, but I'm not good with those kind of cold calls, because
Sure.
to me, it's the relationship aspects too important. And then, the ongoing, so, and one of the examples is we get a lot of church support.
Okay.
And so one of the things we're doing right now, for the churches that support us, is they're getting a letter, just not the regular, letter, thank you for your gift, but just a random letter to the church saying how much it means to
Hmm.
us, what their impact their donation makes. But it's going to be signed by everybody on my board.
Okay.
So I mean, that might not seem like much,
Hmm.
but I know when I get a handwritten note, it
Hmm.
catches my attention.
That's right.
When I get, a letter that's got more than one signature on it, it does, things like that do catch my attention. So you got
Sure.
to figure a way, small ways like that don't cost you anything,
Yeah.
that help you stand out.
Yeah. I think in today's world of everything being so quick and impersonal, I think those types of things have an element of surprise that
Hmm.
anybody would be caught off guard to say, "Oh, that's kind of cool. I didn't expect
Yeah.
that." And
Yeah.
that helps to make that connection, either make it initially or make it stronger.
Hmm. And I think that's really, well, I know that's what's kept some of my corporate donors and the churches that we that we have on our team coming back every year.
Yeah, and you
After year.
mentioned, relating back to the churches, the impact that they're having. I know through our church, when if I'm just a congregant, I'm hearing about a nonprofit that we support, it can seem very surface, but if they talk about specific stories that have happened inside of that organization and how
Right.
our funds helped to make that impact, and the more compelling the better, the more palpable, like where you can feel the hurt of that situation that was mended.
Yeah.
It makes me feel like, hey, we're doing a good thing, we should continue to do this, and we should maybe even do more.
Yeah. And it's, we're all prone to want to tell, like, we help 14,000 families
Yeah,
or
right.
households every year. And because it's such a big number, it's so
That's right.
hard to get my head around that we can actually impact that many people. But quite honestly, when I go into groups and start touting off those numbers, yeah, they glaze over.
Yeah.
But when I start talking about Red, was
Yeah.
homeless, and now he
Yes.
works at Interfaith, and he drives a forklift in his house, and he's
Yes.
come back to life. That's it. I mean, like you said, one
Amazing.
good story that about a real human, a real person,
Yes.
is really what makes the impact. And
Yes. I agree 100%.
and two, I want people to see who they're helping.
Yeah.
When we were launching a campaign for an engagement center, we're actually finally building. Actually, no, this wasn't the engagement. This was we bought an apartment complex to house some of
Okay.
the chronically homeless. And when I was going around, and we didn't need monetary support to buy it, I needed support to help furnish it, and and get people to partner and just support it that way.
Yeah.
So when I went to churches, I really any group, I made these poster size pictures of just the faces of the people that we had targeted to put in there,
Yeah.
and just just 2 seconds on each one to tell their background, their story,
Yeah.
and how this is going to help them. And that was one of the easiest asks we ever
Oh my
had.
gosh. Yeah, I
People,
can totally see people connecting with that, because it is not surface level. You're looking at these 1 to 20 people that
Mhm.
right in front of you, that these are actually people who are going to
Yeah.
live in this apartment,
And then
versus it being,
the churches that
yeah,
rallied, when we posted a picture of them moving in at Facebook, they're in the picture with the same person.
I
It
love it.
was so
I love it.
there's so much about just the humanness of everything.
It's so true. It's so true. Okay, so for this last little bit, what I want to know now is, you come so far. It seems like everything is just rocking along. I know it doesn't look like that under the surface. It never does. But, from our perspective, everything's great. What does the future look like for Interfaith?
That's the hard part. We never dreamed that we would be doing housing,
Yeah.
or be doing, really taking on this initiative to end homelessness in our community.
Hmm.
Um, but it's something that as an organization, we just can't ignore it anymore. We just have this burden for these people that we see day in and day out, that we've gone, that we've come into relationship with. And our challenge is trying to continue to grow and expand in a meaningful way to help people in their homelessness, when a lot of people don't understand homelessness. That it's a real hard piece to educate the community on.
Yeah.
It's easy to say, yeah, we've got these single moms or single parent households that are struggling, they need food, or somebody had a financial crisis and now they're in our shelter. But the chronically homeless, most people think they're lazy or they chose it. I hear that
Yeah.
so often, that they want to be out there. And it's so the challenge for us is just trying to do the education piece with the community, that
Sure.
that so many of these people are intellectually disabled. They're
Hmm.
they suffer from mental illness and other things that most people can't even imagine.
Hmm.
And that's the challenge. We are building an engagement center right now for the whole purpose of trying to engage them in services, help them overcome the barriers they can't overcome on their own, and then
Hmm.
ultimately we want to see them housed.
Yeah.
um I don't my board's kind of like, pump the brakes, Carla. We're not going to do any more housing because so we have a duplex, and then we own an apartment complex, and that's
Yeah.
kind of where they want me to stop that. But the good news is that I think some other organizations have watched us venture into that
Hmm.
and not collapse. And so I actually just made a donation before I got on here to one of my partner agencies that
That's awesome.
they just bought a house so they can house some women. So and not trying to be in this alone is
Sure.
important in the nonprofit world. You are so much more impactful if you link arms with the other agencies and try not to duplicate what they're doing, but
Right.
complement each other. It's such a waste of time and resources to try to do the same thing somebody's doing up the road.
Yes.
But yeah, our challenge is going to be just trying to keep up with that demand and meet that need.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, as more nonprofits come on the scene, there's always that, challenge of keeping your
Hmm.
funds going. A lot of our
That's right.
donors are senior citizens that are passing on. We lost a lot of our donors during the pandemic years, not all of
Right.
the pandemic, but we just lost a lot of them to age and other things. And so, trying to connect with the up and coming professionals,
Hmm.
that's going to be a challenge, I think, and how you get to them, because they a lot of the senior citizens and the people that I reach out to, they're in civic groups or they're in churches. That I get
Right.
these groups of people that are collective together, and I can just do one presentation and hit 300 people. It's hard to find that with the younger generations,
Yes.
where they're in one room like that together. So we're going to have to get creative and come up with
Yeah.
some new ways of reaching the next generation.
Yeah. It sounds like you have your work cut out for you a little bit there, but
Yeah.
not, and it couldn't be too much harder, maybe different, but not harder than starting in a recession. So,
Yeah, true.
you know,
True.
I wish you guys all the best, and
Thank you.
I'm sure everything will go great. Thanks again for being on. Is there any, if people want to reach out to you and get in touch with you, where can I send them?
You can just give them my email address. It's Karla with a K, Karla at I for Interfaith, E for Emergency, S for Services, IES Marion, the county we live in, .org. So it's Karla at iesmarion.org. Feel free to email me there and I'll get
Perfect.
back to you.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks again for being on, and
Thank you
I
for
wish
having
you
me.
all the best.
Thank you so much.